Hey, I popped out my chat this week, so I'm going to say hi. I slid my screen over. Peace and welcome. I'm going to say hi to Vicky and Wanda and Alex and Basilia and Vineyard and Betty and Kimberly and Jay David, John, Nancy, and Annie across the Gulf of Maine. Hey, all right. I'm going to slide back over and let's begin. Peace. Namaste. And welcome to Not Church. Today, Christian creation myth of Eden, sex. No doctrine, no dogma, no Bravo Sierra, deconstruction, mysticism with a Christian accent. Bible through the lens of two near-death experiences, symbol, myth, metaphor. To answer a question that came earlier, is Adam and Eve? Do I think Adam and Eve is literal or metaphorical? It's metaphorical. And simile. And Yale Divinity School education in mysticism. I'm Peter Panagore, ex-clergy and lifelong centering prayer and Kriya yoga practitioner. I'm a light carrier and a channel of light. At least that's been my striving since I came back the first time. And this light that comes through is far beyond me and comes with every transformative mystical experience that the divine gives to a person. And it's an unavoidable impact in a human life, not only interiorly, but also to those around you. You saw and heard some of that from me last week. The dictatorship in Russia, which we won't talk about today, but for this, threatens nuclear World War III if anyone intervenes in Ukraine during the genocide. And we're forced to witness this in our anxiety and our stress and our fear. So if you feel overwhelmed, then please spend a few minutes with me now, retreating into the refreshing crystal water of life, the all life, the river of life that lives inside you and all of us. This energy is real. This radiance, this buzz, this frequency, this light, sound, song sung by the singer is real. Israel. Israel is real. I hold this space for us. We hold this space together. So let's dive inside together as a collective in a community, either live or later. It makes no difference to the energy. Inside, dive inside the light net that entwines the whole face of the earth through us, connecting like little fiber optic spider webs from heart to heart, strands. Now follow along with me. 3 ohms. And why do I do 3 instead of 3? Because of American Sign Language. 1, 2, 3. Follow along with me. 3 ohms, and then we're going to breathe into our bellies in our silent chant. And if this is your first time, you breathe in, hold a beat, half a beat, and release, and ride your breath up into your third eye. And beginners, you can find one video link. Thank you for my friend who tipped me off that the other one wasn't. Well, the first one was better. You can find one video link below. And let's begin. inside. Follow your breath into your belly. Inhale. Hold a half beat. Exhale, release. Ride your prayer up to your third eye and repeat. I reach out with my heart to you. Now, over the past few weeks, we've covered 3 creation myths, 4, if you count the one we're working on right now. We started with Genesis 1, we went to Revelation 22, and then we did the prologue of John, which is the first chapter of the Gospel of John. And now we return to Genesis, the second creation story, which confusingly was authored before the first creation story. Found in Genesis 1, they switcherooed, and which we learned in that first Genesis, we learned about original goodness, your original goodness, the original goodness inside of every living creature, the original goodness inside of every tree, every flower, inside of rivers, inside of rocks, inside of the earth, inside of the moon, inside of molecules, inside of everything, the original goodness, origin of you. And as a soul, as a consciousness, you still own that because it is you. The radiance you feel is a taste of who you are. Any mystical experience you had in your life, any time that the divine touched your heart and changed you, you tasted yourself, your own sweet goodness. The creation myth of Eden, sex. A quick refresher first. The crystal river of all life in Revelation 22 flows out from beneath the heavenly throne of the beloved, watering the city of light, flowing down the main street, watering the 2-trunked trees of life. The 2-trunked tree of life, singular tree, 2 trunks. The living water, which is goodness. The crystal river of all life is the goodness. They are the same. I've talked about how the greatness of the oneness and the unity of love has all these fragmentations in it, these divisions that we experience here in this world of duality. It's not just ones and twos. The love itself is broken into a million, maybe not that many, I don't know the number, parts. Living water is goodness, is love. And it trickles into you and me and the 7 billion little human leaves clinging to the tree of life alive. The myth of Genesis 1 is all about the transcendent, natural mystery of the divine creator above, cosmic, man, invisible, universal. The myth of Genesis 2 is the immanent, right there, immanent, right here inside of everything, the immanent divine walking in the garden. You know that story? You remember that story from childhood? God takes a walk in the garden. And then we see him later in Italian art as an old white man. And we know he ain't no old white man. God's walking in the garden, present, visible, nearby, experiential. This whole myth, Genesis 2 and chapter 2 and 3, is all about the experience of the divine directly, the original goodness and the experience of the divine directly. In mythology, in the myth, the foundational myths of the Western way of thinking about spirituality. These two myths in particular, Genesis 1 and 2, are the foundational myths for our culture, art, music, literature, architecture, wars, human love, and so much more. It's good to understand them for what they are as we deconstruct them and find inside them the light that has always been there, the goodness that's always been there. So Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 together point to the dual nature, Genesis 1 and 2 and 3, actually, to the dual nature of the oneness of being, immanent and transcendent. I've got them backwards. Okay. Immanent, immanent. My God, I got to use this head. Immanent and transcendent, because they're really just one and the same. Okay. We talk about them as immanent and transcendent, but they are oneness. And when you're in the oneness, in the immanence, you're in the transcendence, because that's what happens in the immanence. And when you're in the transcendence, well, when you're in the transcendence on earth and in like an out of body experience, some of you is still in the immanence here, and some of you is in the transcendence there. But when you're in the transcendence there, you're still in the depth, you're in a deeper depth of the immanence. It becomes more true, more real, more experiential. And then you bring some of that back. The dual nature is represented in these chapters, in these myths, the oneness of being as we experience it. Them, experience them, capital T, experience it, capital I, in the world. Transcendence and immanence simultaneously. That's what happens in a mystical experience. You have an experience of the transcendence and the immanence. It's in you. That's what that buzz is. That's what that love is that gets communicated when a person you love has died and come back and shifts your grief, for instance. I love that example. I use it again and again because apparently 48% of the population have had that kind of experience. Heaven here now, right here now. Heaven is paradoxically transcendent and immanent simultaneously. And so are we. We are both at the same time. We are immanent in the world and we are transcendent in the divine. These myths, they unpack in lots of different ways, and that's the power of a myth. That is the power of metaphor. It's disengaged from a singular meaning. And so one myth can point to multiple different understandings of the same subject of immanence and transcendence, both godly, the divine, the source, and us too. And in part, that's what this Eve and Adam story is all about. Now, we're made of this stuff. We're made of the material world, and we're made of the heavenly world, primarily the goodness, okay? Remember that. We're made of mud. You know, last week, I think it was last week, might have been the last week, Ash Wednesday for a lot of Christians. They get the cross on the head, and what happens is, for those of you who don't know, they take the palms from Palm Sunday, they hold them for a year, and then they burn them. It smells great, gotta say. And then you get a little pot full of ash, and then you put the little dust to dust, ashes to ashes. Ash Wednesday is a reminder of the mud nature of your mortality. That's what that's all about. That we are made of matter and molecules breathed into by the Ruha we talked about in chapter 1, the breath of the spirit. And you don't need to take my word for any of this. I don't expect you to, because I'm not a believer, okay? I am not a Bible believer. I see it as a light reflector of myth and myth reflecting the light, these two things tied together. What I am is a near death experiencer. And I know that you experience this. I know that some of you, because you tell me that you've had mystical experiences where you feel this radiance of all these different levels. I know you need only to feel this for myself. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I've never been about trying to talk anybody into anything. You're all going to find out on your own the moment that you transform into who you've always been. When the body, the immanent nature of your physical self, is shocked like an ear of corn on a hot August day, ready to be grilled. Well, I got grilled, but then I got slathered with delicious butter. That was a metaphor, talking about my near death experience. The paradox of duality. We are physical, visible, and below. Physical, visible, and below. And we are spiritual, invisible here, and above. In the middle of you is the goodness, who you are. These two, the immanent and the transcendent, become one in you. And inside of you is the oneness. And if you aim at that oneness, it is the totality of all the universe, of all universality. It is all that there is. It is the reality of yourself, and you carry the the luminous nimbus temple of divine centering self of goodness right here. You don't need out there. We use the out there Bible and the myths to talk about it and to so that I can try to explain it and have a conversation with you about your experience with it. It's right here. It always has been. Now, we're going to talk about matter. Genesis 2 literally begins the patriarchy, and that matters. Ignoring the equality of the soul nature. Ignoring. So this myth begins the patriarchy in Western culture. And it completely ignores the lesson that's right inside the myth itself, which is the immanent transcendent nature of the divine and the great equality that there is because of that. This is where the equality lies, in its original self. You and me, of many and any genders, the same light. The golden goodness, that little speck that I saw when I was dead, inside 7 billion souls, is inside you. It's inside of everything. Everything sparkles with this divine light. Genesis 2 is mud made human fused with spirit, infused, body inhabited, incarnated, consciousness living in material form. Immanent creator took clay, molded, and blew life into it. When I blow, I get a little sound, a little vibration. I was blown into being with the vibration of the mythical, metaphorical vocal cords of the divine. This is the life inside all of us. I live as the breath of the divine being blowing inside my body now. That's the sound I hear. It's the name I hear. It's this breath that's always blowing, this roar that's always sounding, this stream that's always flowing. All creation blows into being over billions of light years. All creation over billions of light years blown into being here and now. So, did you know that the word Adam means soil. So when God creates the earth, Adam, then God creates the human one, Adam, made of matter, stardust we are. Soil here represents matter and molecules. Out of heaven, the crystal river flows toward the rising sun. In this myth, the crystal river flows to the east. Maybe you know the novel East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This is where he gets the title. And if you read the story, you'll see a reflection of this story in this book and of the first Genesis 2 also. The crystal river flows out to the east, creating an oasis inside an empty wilderness. An oasis is a garden inside a desert that extends for 1,100,000,000 light years. There is a garden heaven, an Eden, encased somehow in the divine light, a bubble of light. I don't know, something like that, metaphorically speaking, aiming to a truth. And in this garden, in this oasis, this human, this Adam, is placed. And everything the creature needs to live well is here, is there in Eden. Eden is good living, the story tells us. There are commodities for wealth and growth: gold, frankincense, resin for perfume. Ooh la la. What? Why is that important? Because it's worth money. And precious onyx for carving. All sorts of useful things. Tool making devices. Gold is ornament. Perfume is for beauty. This is paradise with a capital P and a big step above the earth, metaphorically, mythically speaking. This Eden reminds me of Dr. Eben Alexander's Paradise, if you read his book. Something like that. It's well-watered land that produces plenty to eat, and it's all good except this one tree, the fruit of which is the knowledge of good and evil. We know the face of evil. We know the face of evil right now on earth. The tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge, I'd rather rename it as the tree of knowledge. We each eat of the tree of knowledge every time we incarnate. I ate the apple twice in my life, thrice if you count my first physical birth. I chose to know duality. And I see the extremes of goodness and the darkness of a soul and evil. And knowledge of all kinds of other opposites, up and down, left and right, light and dark. Because the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is a terrible name because it's not evil here. It's just not evil here. It's just full of suffering. But there are, of course, egos that are so self-centered that they become so dark that they can't see humanity's light anymore, or the divine, even though it lives inside them. But that's a choice people make. So we're in this world of opposites. And in the myth, a warning was given. Hey, Adam, if you eat of this, you're going to die. I have eaten, chosen twice, so that in life I might know death and the 10,000 other things of luscious living and beauty and suffering in the world. I chose to die. Near death experience isn't just about choosing to come back to life. Near death experience includes the choice to die again. It's an odd thing unless you're living it. In my incarnation, I was cut into two parts: my higher self, my transcendent self, and my lower self, my immanent self. I'll repeat that. In my incarnation, I'm cut into two parts. My higher self gets cut into two parts: a higher self and a lower self. Of course, the higher self is still the totality of who I am, but it gets divided, and my experience becomes down here. Creator and the myth cuts the human Adam in two. But the other part of the symbol is that they're equal. The Adam is cut in two to make a spiritual being and a physical being, but also is cut in two to make equal beings made of liquid light. Because the experience of a person who has died, or at least let me just say it, my experience of dying is that in my transcendent self, I have no gender. I am above gender or sex, even no sex parts, no physicality, no eyeballs, none of those things. Great equality, the great equality of gender and sex, color and creed, origin of nationhood, mental health state, physical health state, political point of view, a great equality of light. It becomes clear when you begin to seek it and see it for yourself, or clearer anyway. Symbols in myths, as I've said, have multiple meanings. This myth that we're talking about, just as the one became two, so the two becomes one. Just so the one becomes two, the two becomes one. We get the Eve and the Adam, and they're split off of the oneness. But also, the two become one, this myth tells us. There's a sexuality to spirituality. There's a spirituality to sexuality. In the intimate, sexual, spiritual, human sense, two souls can merge, lifting above the body, melting into each other in an ecstasy, an orgasmic ecstasy of oneness that's beyond the physicality, includes the physicality, but is also above the physicality, melding into each other's consciousness, becoming one. Have you ever had a mystical sexual experience? Please say so in the comments, very simply saying, I have. No details unless you want to, but I'm not pressuring you. This is still, I don't know about the rating system at, I don't know, YouTube, but just say I have. We stop a moment here to take a breath together and notice the text, how the author intervenes and puts himself. Let's take a breath first. Notice how the author intervenes in the story and shows up. We have this mythology going on, but the author can't help but show himself, and he shows himself through civilization. Adam and Eve are in the garden, and already they need tools. They need perfume. They need ornamentation, gold. The author's interjecting himself here. He's showing his face. And that's what happens. In all of the storytelling of all of the Bible, the author always shows his face. In every single story, there's an interpretation going on where the mythology gets reduced and the author shows his face, his thinking, his belief systems, his politics, his orientation, his mystical experience. And I say he because patriarchy, that's who was able to write in those days. There's a human genius inside of you, a genius that's flawed and a genius that is perfect. This genius that lives inside of you is accessible to you. It's the divine light itself. And some of the genius of the writer was mixing these two together, because that's the only way you can ever talk about it. You can only ever talk about it in language, and that means the writer intervenes into the writing. And so there's some genius going on here in the transcendence, but there's also genius in the trying to express it. And in expressing it, mess it up and use it, ruin it half the time. Nah, that's an exaggeration. And expressing it, always filtering it in such a way that the egoic self is always present. We even find that in the writing of Paul. When he shows up and he starts being all misogynistic. This myth is used to support repression against the queer community. This myth has been used to repress the queer community forever. They say, this is what I hear. Oh, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. It says, a human shall cleave to his wife. Okay, it does say that. But homosexuality is natural, despite what they say. Oh, it's unnatural. It is natural because it's found everywhere in nature. I counted 160 animals in modern science they have identified so far 160 animals as displaying homosexual behaviors. 160 so far, including elephants and dolphins and the naked apes, otherwise known as human beings, intelligent creatures. You can see the link below for the list. Plus all of this, there is no gender in the state of union. There's only divine light. Adam, he's in the garden, and he gets to name everything. And he does name everything. But despite naming everything, he does not name the woman until long after the fall. He names everything else. The author names everyone else except for the woman. Now, WTF, right? But I'm a little ahead of my comment. So next week, we're going to get into nakedness and the mythical sword of fire protecting The Round Trip to Paradise, tentatively titled, You Will Not Die, said the snake. This survey of creation stories has been one big surprise about creation. What am I saying? Okay, take that sentence again. Take it from the top. This survey of creation stories has one more surprise, one more creation surprise. In a couple of weeks, and I'll tell you about it. There's another creation story, and we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to end up with the Tower of Babel. And so, in 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to be done with this, and then this series is over. And this series is an interior series of a much longer series that I began 2 years ago, as I was trying to help people understand all the stuff that I told you about in January 1st. I said, okay, this is the end of the first series. It's been a year and a half. Now I've done this series on creation. Now I'm ready to go into the wisdom sayings of Jesus. I feel like all of this is prep work to understand the mysticism of Christian expression, the expression of Christian mysticism. But it's really not Christian mysticism, it's divine mysticism with a Christian accent. That's even what all the mystics were saying. Well, they were still in their context of their cultural confinement, but they also were expressing the inexpressible in the language of the context of the period of the people who they were, with the education that they had, and the language that they were capable of. We'll start with the woman at the well in a few weeks. The woman at the well. We're going to begin with a little bit of misogyny and a little bit of beauty and a little bit of understanding and mostly just light. So, and the months to come, I'm going to ask you to pretty please send in to me whatever stories you want me to talk about. Okay? So if you have biblical stories you want me to unpack that you think are mystical, that have mystical light inside them, let me know. Put them in the comments. That'd be great. So I'm scrolling up here. Oh, yeah. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary. And we're going to deconstruct stuff through mystical understanding. And of course, our personal spiritual paths of experiential transformation. This divine light inside you is the radiant living presence. And when we gather together, when we hold space with each other, we find this, I've said, because Jesus said, the I am, where 2 or 3 are gathered, I am there. There's this multiplication presence that happens of great equality. So thanks to you, and thanks to the beloved for gathering here with me and with us, I should say, for gathering with us together today. And week to week, your gifts and your encouragements help me keep this space for you together. I want to thank you. And I literally couldn't do it without you. I keep it free rather than erecting paywalls, because the light belongs to everybody, everywhere, all the time. That's why all my life I've been doing this. I've been trying to share the ineffable voice as I was instructed before I died in a vision the year before I died on the Appalachian Trail, an out-of-body experience, mystical experience. I got the message, give it away, give it away, give it away. But I need support. So please use PayPal, Patreon, or Venmo. I also do weddings locally. Thanks. Also, counseling and conversation by appointment at peterpanagore.love. At the top of the next hour, which is rapidly coming, I talked a long time today to get through this. We have Chia Salon. It's an international conversation about mystical experience. Humility and kindness are our rules, and the link is below. Thanks for spending time with me. Please like and subscribe. Helps a lot. Thank you. Namaste and peace. And now I'm going to jump over to the chat. And I have a chat has popped out this week, so I should be able to see it a little better. We'll see what happens. I keep learning. Oh, it's going so fast. Peter, how much did you... Wow, it's going wicked fast. Someone said thank you. Oh, thank you, Mary. Peter, how much of this did you learn at Yale, and how much did you discover on your own? So the language and the language I learned on my own. The let me explain it this way. When I went to Yale, I went hunting for mystical experience. I went hunting for contemplation. And in the depth of the reading, the broad reading, I found reflections of my own understanding, the reflections of my own inner experience, the reflections of my own mystical experiences. I found them in Teresa of Avila, the Cloud of Unknowing, John of the Cross, a whole long list of people. So primarily, initially, and personally, it's interiorly the object of my understanding is directly from my divine experiences. And I went hunting for reflections. And so then I learned the complexity of the language to create a superstructure for me to think about everything that happened to me and continues to happen to me. So my answer, Tim, is that it's first the divine being of reality with a capital R, and secondarily, it's the language that I needed in order to construct a form to process it. I hope that helps. Um, and and even more importantly than knowledge is practice, is the divine presence itself. So if I had to make a choice between, and I didn't fortunately, but if I had to make a choice between in-depth study. And by the way, I continued after div school. I didn't just stop reading. I continued to read. I read everything that I could lay my fingers on that I had enough time to read as a mystic. So, and the weird thing is that nobody cared. Like I'm in the church and I'm reading all the time about these mystical things, and nobody knew. They wanted me to read books. They didn't care what they were, so I just read books. Thanks, Logan, and thanks, Patricia. Wow, thank you very much. Is CZK, is that Czechoslovakia? Wow. I don't know what CZK is. Thank you. So I hope that answers your question, Tim. But if I had to choose between knowledge and the cloud of unknowing, I choose the cloud of unknowing. If I had to choose between education and divine presence, if I had to, I would choose the practice of the divine presence because that's where the reality of it lives. The knowledge of it is helpful. It helps me communicate to you. It helps me communicate to lots of people. It helps me to communicate to myself because I needed a structure to think about it, to process it, to find what matters most. But most importantly is the emptiness of self and the emptiness of thought. And in that tiny space that maybe one breath, one chant once a week is enough. That one moment of silence is enough to create a depth of communication with the divine, which is, and one of the things I learned that from, what the heck was his name? Oh, my brother Lawrence, Frere Lawrence. Uh, he was illiterate, but he was magically mystical through his chanting. Eden is not just a myth, nor is it a parable. Are you saying, Robert, that yes, it's a myth in that it describes um, the thing that can't be spoken, and it's true in a way that uh, Eben Alexander saw it. Is that what you mean, Robert? Um, Link to what, Beth? I don't know. But Mystic Tea Salon at the top of the hour, there's a link below. The Merkaba pointed triangle going up presents male phallus, male energy, and the bottom pointing represents woman's female energy. I wonder how great it would be to balance that out. Yes, thank you. That answers my question. Great, Tim. Peter, Czechoslovakia. Thanks, Rob. Let's see what else is in there. Donations. Our donations help Peter invest his time in helping us grow. Thanks, Susan. That's very helpful. And thanks, Logan, and thanks, Patricia, very much. It's a peterpanagore.love. A chemical path of gold is an anthology of parables and metaphor, the illuminated castle. That's how it reads to you. Oh, yeah. alchemical path of gold as an analogy of parables and metaphor. Yeah, I see that. That the transformation of you from lead into gold. Um, Thank you, Peter, for sharing what you've learned. You're welcome, Beth. Lovely as always. Thanks, Tiffany. I really get a lot out of today's video. Thank you, Basilia. Um, thanks, Kate. Wonderful counselor. Thank you. I don't understand why gold is so important. Gold is a metaphor. You mean in Genesis? Because it's ornate. It's gold is a metal that took a long time for humans figure out how to work. So you had stone, and then you found gold, and gold had a low melting point, and then gold you could make ornaments from it. So it's sparkly things. I think it was really about wealth. I don't know a lot about the history of gold, but I know a little bit about the how human beings uh, created tools, and gold kind of came along the way. I don't know whether it was before copper or after, but so I'm not sure about that part. But people early on, people were using gold for uh, wealth, and maybe that's what the gold was all about. Alrighty-o. Sorry, I thought it would be convenient USD. Never used this function before. I'm not sure what you're saying. Eden is a path of souls created for our manifestation. Adam died in its creation. I wonder about Eve. Read Gospel Thomas. Sure, reading the Gospel of Thomas is helpful, but I'm not really understand what you're saying, Robert. I'm sorry to say. Does prayer asks for forgiveness for everyone to get people who may not believe? Yeah. So in the end, everybody, it's self evident. The light shows itself to anyone and everyone who dies, and everyone who turns toward it turns to it. That's what I understand. I turned around and left off the fire. I understood that I didn't deserve me. My belief had nothing really to do with it. It had to do with the light itself and the love itself. And I could see the light itself inside of every person, inside of one center of the sacred place inside them. When I saw 7 billion people living, they had this light inside them, every one. And every one of us is made of this divine light. And this light is who we are. And it's not just about our end and the aim of our, it is the day, the living way of living our daily life is the Orden, the uh, a I'm losing myself here. I got a little crazy there. Wasn't able to say exactly what I was trying to say. I wish I could describe that everyone is loved always, always, no matter who you are and what you've done, no matter what you believe. If you understand love in life, the life will bring you to the light itself. I hope that helps. I really tried to say it a different way, but I wasn't able to today. Sometimes I don't have the words to say it. I just wish I did. You feel like you're walking in molasses here after seeing the other side. Yeah, it is like that, Tim. Like molasses. Our intention is what's the most important. Yeah. Jesus says Adam died in his act of eating the apple. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is take a time off here, and I'm going to see you in about 10 minutes or so. I can't really see. I'm using the what do they call it? I've moved. I put the chat over, and I can't really see it well, and I'm not sure what to do with that. It's too far away from me, and it's hard for me to read it. So I have to figure out that problem. And so some of the words I can read, but not all of them. I'm sorry to say, it's too far away. All right, so I tried. I'll see you in a few minutes. See you then. Peace and love, everyone. Love you all. See you soon. Peace.